Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week, it's a vintage Early Years of SNL. We are talking about one of the greatest episodes ever, Season 3, Episode 18, hosted by Steve Martin with musical guests, the Blues Brothers. Brad, this is an amazing episode of SNL.
So good, we had to break it up into two parts. This is going to be part one of this amazing episode. This episode's got everything. Wild and crazy guys, Festrunk Brothers, Theodoric of York, Dance in the Dark, King Tut, nerds.
Holy cow.
A Gary Weiss film, the Blues Brothers. It's got everything.
And this episode of the podcast has a very special interview with Paul Shaffer, who was nice enough to take his time and talk to us about this episode and working with the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, this one's a lot of fun. Paul came and talked to us, told some great stories about the Blues Brothers, his involvement with them. We get through about half the episode. It's really fun. And this is probably the favorite episode of ours that we've done. This is, I think, it's just a lot of stuff comes together for us. So. And it's just, we hit our stride. I don't know. I just really like this one. It's really great. we get some great guests, this and part two. So, and it's always fun to talk about great episodes. And this is one of the greatest of all time.
It's a wonderful episode. The podcast episode in itself is amazing. Listening to Paul and talking to him about it. Like Brad said, this is just part one of the two parts that we did on season 3, episode 18, Steve Martin and the Blues Brothers. You're going to love this.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night.
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Greg Seath and Brett Robinson.
And you're not. I'm already thrown off.
This week, we're talking about season 3, episode 18. With host Steve Martin and musical guest, the Blues Brothers. This show originally aired on April 22nd, 1978. Brad, this is the ultimate all-timer.
This is it.
It is.
This is the big one. So excited.
Yes. I mean, there's so much to talk about in this episode that everyone already knows. The sketches and the performances. It's amazing. It's an outstanding episode.
That's amazing. Steve Martin, third time hosting this season, the only time in the history of the show someone's hosted the show 3 times.
Yeah.
Obviously a bunch of 2 times, but only time we've ever had 3 times. This feels like it's the epitome of the show doing whatever it wants. We want to throw a host on for the 3rd time. Yes. We're going to have cast members play fictitious people that you don't know as the booked musical guests.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. And it all works. That's the thing too, is everything works.
It all works incredibly well, and it's incredible that it all works because, yeah, when you say it like that, 2 cast members as fictitious musical guests, that kind of sets it apart and makes it different.
Back, I think, around like the 15th anniversary, they started releasing, best ofs and all that kind of stuff, or maybe even early and late 80s.
Right.
They released this episode as a standalone VHS tape that I had.
Amazing.
Granted, it's like edited down, and it's really just all the stuff everybody really knows, but still, the fact that they made this episode, and they've done it a few times, but not that many times, but you could actually buy, in theory, just this episode on VHS.
That's remarkable. And it's worth it.
I mean, for a very long time, if not still, many people have said this is the, if not one of the best episodes of Saturday Night Live of all time.
I don't know how anyone could argue with that.
Yeah. Tom Davis has said so in his book. He wrote a whole chapter about this episode because he thought it was the best episode of all time. Even Steve Martin's been quoted as saying, it's like the peak of Saturday night. It was the peak of me.
Wow.
Just everything firing together on all cylinders from the very open to the very end. It's just everything's there.
Yes. Yes. We should say that this is such a huge episode and there's so much to talk about. We also have 3 very special guests that join us throughout this episode. So I think we should just get into it.
Yeah, there's a lot. We should just get into it. We got a lot to talk about.
The cold open this week starts with Paul Shaffer as Don Kirshner introducing the Blues Brothers. Dan and John come on as Jake and Elwood, and they perform a legit song, Hey Bartender.
Floyd Dixon song, yeah. I think everybody or most people probably know the story of the Blues Brothers at this point. Dan was a big blues fan. John started getting into the blues a lot when he was filming Animal House earlier this year. And he would hang out with this guy in Portland, this blues artist called Curtis Salgado, and eventually asked him to get on stage and jam with him. And I think John originally wanted to do Jailhouse Rock. And Curtis was like, no, you got to learn this song. And the song he told him was Hey Bartender. And John comes back apparently like 3 days later, knows the song, and starts jamming on Hey Bartender with this guy, Curtis Salgado, while he's in Portland. Animal House ends, John's back in New York, and he would just go to clubs randomly and just jump in with bands and sing like Hey Bartender, Sweet Home Chicago, Jailhouse Rock, all this kind of stuff. And Lauren eventually caught the act one night, and he's like, you can do this to warm up the audience before SNL. So before they did this on the show proper, he and Dan were doing this gig as the Blues Brothers with the house band, warming up the audience before the live shows.
And Dan was totally immersed in the blues beforehand, right? Like he was a huge blues fan.
Yeah, when they first met, even before SNL, they met in Toronto. And, you know, John being from Chicago, Dan couldn't understand that John wasn't a blues fan. He's like, how do you not know blues? You're from Chicago. But meanwhile, Dan was, like thoroughly entrenched, diehard devotee of the blues. So when John finally, for lack of a better word, came around earlier this year when he was in Portland, he came back and the two of them kind of fused together to make this act.
Yeah, so this is remarkable because they just started performing together a few months prior, right? And then,
I mean, we know they've been doing stuff in the past. I mean, season 1, we saw them as they did King Bee. So they've had this kind of in the back of their head kicking it. You got to remember too, and we talked about it a little bit, I think, back in season 1, John would always complain. And again, season 1, they had really bad musical guests. But John used to always complain, why are we have these musical acts? Like the cast is so talented. Why can't we be musical guests? So John's been trying to get on the show and perform as a musician since season 1. And so he and Dan have been doing something, and they had something in their back pocket the whole time. But it's really been these last few months when he came back and they would get on stage with Willie Nelson's band and they would back them at different times and blues bands in New York City. And just, it really started building the momentum in the weeks since, really, I think since Willie was on the show up till now.
Well, we could spend literally hours talking about the Blues Brothers and the origin of the Blues Brothers.
I mean, Dan Aykroyd has. Dan Aykroyd has put out a 2-hour history of the Blues Brothers. So.
Right. But let's talk to someone more specifically about this performance who was actually there.
Yeah, very excited to have with us the man most famously known as musical director, band leader, and sidekick to David Letterman for over 30 years on both Late Night and The Late Show. But there's nothing really he has not done. Musician, singer, songwriter, composer, actor, author, comedian, solo recording artist, nominated for 4 Emmys, has won a Grammy, the only person in the history of Saturday Night Live to be a band member, cast member, and host, truly earning the nickname Mr. Entertainment himself, Paul Shaffer.
Guys, it's a thrill. And I think that John Belushi introduced me as such on the first Blues Brothers record.
Yeah.
Yep.
May have been the only nice thing he said about me. No. No, we had an intense but successful working relationship.
I think intense is a great word to describe John Belushi, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you began your career as the musical director of Godspell in Toronto in 1972.
That's right. Godspell was a 70s rock musical, big hit off-Broadway in New York, companies all over the world. Stephen Schwartz, the composer, he cast a marvelous company of kids that we're all still friends today. thinking about Eugene Levy and Martin Short, the late great Gilda Radner. When I first met her, was she was in Toronto at the time, although she was from Detroit originally, and Andrea Martin, perhaps the funniest of them all, and many more. Oh, Victor Garber had been the original lead in it. Anyway, yes, that's right. And at the end of the auditions, I had gone to the auditions to accompany a couple of friends of mine who were auditioning. And Steve Schwartz at the end of the day said, "Could you get a band together and conduct the show just like that?"
Really?
And all of a sudden I was in show business. Yeah. I had played for these two girls who had sung for him earlier. And then he said, "Well, can you stay for the rest of the auditions?" The piano player doesn't know all the songs. The kids were all singing, mainly Aquarius from Hair. And that's what Eugene Levy sang anyway. But I knew these songs. So he said, "Can you stay?" And then he hired me at the end of the day. And yes, that's how, certainly how I met all those wonderfully talented kids.
Then you moved to New York after that?
Yeah, because Stephen Schwartz again said, when this show is over up here, I'm going to bring you into New York to work for me there. And he did. And the show that was in question was called The Magic Show, 1974. Played for 5 years, I think. I only did the first year of it before Saturday Night Live started. And Howard Shore, Lauren's best friend from Canada, he was the musical director. I was already in town working for Stephen Schwartz in The Magic Show, and he called me up doing this thing live on Saturday nights. I had never met Lauren in Canada, but I was aware of him and his Hart and Lauren Terrific Hour.
And you knew Howard from Canada, right? As well as a couple of the cast at this point, Gilda and Dan.
Gilda, of course, because we worked for a year in Godspell. Dan, a little bit, because he was hanging out. He wasn't in Godspell, but hanging out a little bit. And then I would go to see them in the Second City nightclub show that developed up there. But Howard, once I had done that Godspell, I got a couple more gigs in theater in town. And on one of them, Howard came in to play the saxophone. And that's where I met him. I was conducting this other show, local show, Howard on sax. We hit it off. He remembered me. I left town, came to New York. He got here and remembered me and called me. And I was like the one ringer in the band, because the rest of the band was contracted by the late, great Howard Johnson.
Right.
Joe Boyd, friend of Lauren's, said to Howard Shore, get Howard Johnson. He'll get you a good band. And he did. He got this very eclectic, all kinds of different guys. And then this one guy from Canada, me, that Howard Shore stuck in there.
Earlier this year, we lost Martin Mull.
Yeah.
And after he passed, there was an interview he gave talking to Norm Macdonald where he said he was part of the band at one point. Do you remember this?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it true? Where he said he came in because, he would play guitar and they thought he could bring him in and do some sketches. And he said he basically showed up to rehearsals and saw this lineup of musicians and just realized he couldn't do it. He had to quit the band. Is that true?
Yes, I can confirm that. I was there. And let's see, it was Lauren's idea to bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him saying he could be the voice of the band. And Lauren's just kicking around concepts. What could this show be at this point? Maybe, a guy speaks up live from the band and it's Martin Mull, but he's one of two guitar. We had another guitar player too, But Howard Shore, this is the way I remember it anyway. Howard Shore was going to kind of leave that as Lauren would have wanted it to develop on its own. Howard Shore felt my job is to just integrate him with the musicians. Mm-hmm. And so he sat beside Bert Jones, who was our other guitarist. And they both had a big L5 style guitars. I remember them both sitting there. And we were just running the tunes down. That's all, Obviously, he had to learn the songs, and then the rest of it would develop. But for him, I guess, it was an evening of charts and reading may not have been his specialty. And he'd say, I don't belong here. He couldn't see the big picture. And maybe he wasn't happy with the whole, who knows? Right. Anyway, all of that, certainly true.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it worked out for him in the end.
Worked out for him quite beautifully.
Yeah. So the first 2.5 seasons, you're primarily a member of the band, correct?
Second season, I missed most of it. I had auditioned for a television pilot years earlier that it had sold, and around the second season of Saturday Night Live. And I went to California and did like a summer series for a minute, but which bombed, and I came back and got my old job back.
Right.
A show called A Year at the Top that played in the summer of 77, 5 episodes, and then I returned to the SNL after that.
And you had also been contributing some music to the show, right? You did some writing with Chevy's Girls and the Goodbye Saccharine routine, right? And so in addition to being with the band, you were doing some of those musical sketches as well.
When Howard Shore hired me, he said, and it'll work out because you already know a lot of the performers, not only Gilda and Danny from Toronto, but when I first got to town, I met Belushi. Through that, I mentioned that Second City started a club up in Toronto just before I had left town.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the club was started by 2 cats from Chicago Second City Club, Joe Flaherty, we just lost him, and Brian Doyle Murray, Billy's older brother. Brian and I became close friends. He introduced me around when I got to New York. He was already here. And he introduced me to Belushi, one of the first guys I met. And Doug Kenny was there that very same afternoon.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know how auspicious it was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how far back I knew all these guys. So Howard Shore said, you'll work with them. And in those early days of the show, Wednesday afternoon, a kind of a free-form musical rehearsal would take place off-site at a studio on 57th Street, a studio called NOLA, N-O-L-A, which we used as a rehearsal place, and just kind of worked out ideas almost like you would imagine early improv theater, Lauren would be there for first couple of weeks. Lauren was there trying to get something going. And I remember, for instance, one night at a very old-fashioned kind of variety show move, all the kids were around the piano, I think the cast members, and that's where Belushi first did his Ray Charles impression. Maybe this didn't make the air, or maybe I dreamed it, but I think that kind of came out of the Wednesday afternoon thing.
Yeah.
We were all trying out. So I was kind of brought in to contribute. And then I think it was Marilyn Suzanne Miller who said, I've got this idea. Shirley Temple is, is an ambassador as an adult, but she goes into in order to negotiate, she goes into a number like she's a little child actress. And so I worked on that with Marilyn, and that was, I think, maybe my first official, co-write on a number.
Okay.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, it's funny you say how the idea was going to grow organically. By the end of season 2, we do finally catch you a little bit more prominent in sketches, because at the end of season 2 is when Bill Murray starts doing Nick the Lounge Singer. And so we see him at the end of season 2, and it comes back into season 3. And then it's funny, you mentioned Brian Doyle Murray comes in to the writing staff in season 3. And that's what really leads to the first time we see you prominently. And it's the Don Kirshner impression, not in this sketch, but a few episodes earlier when you introduce Mr. Mike and the Mikeettes.
Yes, exactly. And it's true that Brian Doyle Murray was responsible for it, in that he came up with an idea that would eventually involve me. And the idea was the great Garrett Morris, who could do anything, including put on 4-inch heels if he had to, and a little dress. And he did Tina Turner,
right,
with fantastic energy and terrific in drag. And Brian Doyle, always a very verbal writer, and he was thinking about Mike and Tina. Hey, how about Mr. Mike and Tina Turner? But it was needed such exposition that Brian was saying, well, how are we going to set this up? When he said, how are we going to set this up? I said, well, I just worked with Don Kirshner on this thing in Hollywood. But at this point, he was on TV doing a very stiff introductions to these live acts. And I was there when he first went on camera. because he knew I was a fan of his and knew about his other life as a publisher. And he said, babe, he was very fast talking. Babe, I want you on camera. You know, I'm going to go on camera. He said, you know, people say I'm stiff, but Sullivan was stiff, but he had the gig. You know what I'm saying? Sullivan was stiff, but he had the gig. And he would just come up with these phrases at faster, lightning speed. But when he went on camera and I was right there, he said, I'm done, Kushner, and he froze up. And I never forgot it. And I said I could do that at the top of this. And Brian said, fine. And, you know, so I got to go on camera.
Just the fact that you knew Don Kirshner and had just worked with him and then could use that as the perfect setup for Mr. Mike, but then bring it back for the intro of the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, well, that one, you know, I think they asked me, you know, Blues Brothers, Paul should introduce it.
So the idea always was to do a Don Kirshner intro for this piece.
It just, I don't know. You do it once on the show, like Chevy did the fall once. All of a sudden they're saying, well, Paul introduces these things. You know, great. You know, yes, I'll be there. Put on the tan, you know, it involved a fake tan, of course. A low unbuttoned shirt, gold chain, and tan all over.
It was perfect.
And prior to this episode, John and Dan, they've been warming up the audience as these characters, right? They've been playing Blues Brothers with the band as the warm-up act, right, for a few weeks?
Yes, and I think that, you know, trying to remember this the other day, I think that they started doing this while I was off the show in that second season.
Okay.
When I came back, got my old job back, they were opening with Blues Brothers stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's my recollection anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got to do it on, well, the first time they did it was as the Bees.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I guess it was Belushi who hated the bee running gag, having to dress up like a bee. He hated that more than anything. Or it could have been Danny who said, well, you know, what if we say the Bees and we do I'm a King Bee Baby and we do a blues number at bee costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they got over that very first time.
Do you remember how this performance came to be? How they went from warming up the studio audience to being the musical guest, the legitimate musical guests for an episode?
No, I'm not sure.
Oh,
my recollection is that they killed on that
they did.
Show. And they killed with the house band.
Yes.
You know, Howard's band.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of me. I was up in the balcony introducing it.
You got to play the second number, though, right?
What was the second number?
I don't know.
Well, sound like that bit. Yeah. Who's on first? I don't know either. I don't know. Was it Willie Maybon or something? One tune that we did on the album.
Yeah.
Which Belushi did great. And yeah, I got to play on that one.
Yeah.
And then after that, you know, their next appearance, of course, was triumphant with their own band that I was a part of too.
Was there any conversations? It's kind of a ballsy move when you look at it. Here's, you know, these two guys, comedians on the show, to open the show with this performance. Was the idea always to start the show with them, or like when dress, was it in the middle and you pulled it up? Or
to me, it was obvious that they had an energy that was irresistible, and Lorne only has to see that once before he'll say, well, let's open with that. You know, it's an obvious choice. What else are you going to open with? I certainly was always aware that I was going to do an intro as if it was the cold opening. I kind of remember that.
It's such a smart intro, too. Do you remember who wrote that? We've seen it credited that it might have been Al Franken. Do you know? Or did you write that?
My recollection is that I wrote most of it. And, you know, it was the second time doing it. So the first time was to introduce Garrett as Mike and Tina with O'Donnell. And I was definitely in on the writing of that with Brian. And during the Kirshner section, we were parroting. One of the things he did was always mention behind the scenes guys, agents or managers, when introducing an act. Peter Frampton, you know, when D. Anthony called me, who's a gentleman, by the way. And, you know, we had these things, but we would reverse the names. Like we were mentioning the two guys from Atlantic Records, the founders. I don't even think they hadn't signed with Atlantic yet.
No.
But I knew these guys, and I was talking about Ahmet Ertegun and Jerry Wexler, the historic great founders, but I would reverse their names, Ahmet Wexler.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was just a holdover from the Garrett Morris intro.
So I love this was so smart. He mentions Marshall Checkers, could play on chess records.
Chess, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I was being a little bit historic, but then the other complication, if you will, but all for the best, was that, and those of us scholars of the Blues Brothers know that Belushi, during his time away from SNL, doing Animal House, the movie, hung out incessantly with a blues performer, Curtis Salgado. Curtis Salgado and his band, the Cray Band, turned out to be Robert Cray.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Belushi was hanging out with these guys, probably sitting in and really learning in all-night listening sessions with this guy, Curtis Salgado, learning all about the blues. Even though Belushi was from Wheaton, Illinois, just outside Chicago, he knew his rock and roll for sure, but blues he was just catching up on. Aykroyd, an expert on the blues from Canada, but not Belushi. So he learned a lot from Curtis Salgado, and he wanted a shout out to them. And he would come to me, last minute, he came running up to me, change it to Curtis Salgado and the Robert Cray Band, and then it became the Cray Band.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cray, he had a specific way he wanted to get their names into this intro. I'd never heard of Robert Cray or anything, whatever you want. So that kept changing, and that's why those names are in there.
Yeah.
As a shout out from Belushi to those guys.
So obviously you had seen them perform a bunch by this point, right? And they've been warming up, so you'd seen them. What was your reaction watching them do it live and on TV, the performance of Hey Bartender that night?
In all honesty, I have since learned to appreciate the act more than I did at the time. I don't know, maybe because I was, kind of part of putting it together with them. I did get the original band together with them and stuff. Nowadays, there's so many bands that do the tribute acts to the Blues Brothers. I've seen a couple of them. And when I do, I say, hey, they were pretty good. It kind of reminds me of the original article and how they did pull it off. Who knew John could really, no, he didn't sing like Pavarotti, but he could sure sing like a lot of the blues performers that we knew.
Right.
How could he do that as well as being the funniest guy? And Danny could actually play that blues harmonica. And when he sang Rubber Biscuit, forget it, Case closed. They were terrific. I didn't realize it at the time. That's what I'm trying to say. Now I realize they were terrific.
How shortly after this episode did John come to you? Because you are pretty much one of the main people responsible, if not the guy, for putting the band, the actual Blues Brothers band, together. Do you remember how quickly after this episode?
No, I'm not sure.
Oh,
Somewhere in there, though, they got a record deal to make an album out of this act.
Dan tells the story that they got the deal immediately after this episode.
We did have a week once they got that record deal, and the plan was, they hired me to put the band together, which I did one by one with John.
The timeline, and I don't know if this blows your mind or not, it blows mine. So this is the end of April in 1978 where they perform.
Okay, yeah.
It's September of that year that you guys open up for Steve Martin and record the album.
And recorded it, yeah.
It's released in November, and that February it hits number one. So that's 9.5 months, which to me just blows my mind that all of that happens in that short of a span.
Yeah. I kind of mind-blowing. Yes, I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah. So I don't remember how, obviously not that much time. I remember rehearsing in the summertime, and I remember that we put aside a first week me, John, and Danny would hang out John's place in Morton Street and pick the songs. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they had those two already. Mm. We got, we started on hiring the band musician by musician, similar to the way they did it in that first movie. But what I wasn't counting on was that the Animal House would come out that very same week. And John blasted off into the stratosphere of stardom that very week. So obviously we didn't get all that much work done. He was just receiving kudos on the phone, pretty much nonstop.
Yeah.
And then we were just about to get down to work one day, or let's try these 3 songs. But the Allman Brothers are in Central Park, and they go on like in a half an hour. What? And they are gone. You know? So that's, once the musicians got there, it was easier to get them to sit down and learn the stuff.
So after they asked you to put the band together, who was the first person you immediately thought of and thought, we need this guy in the band?
Steve Jordan was the first. He did a lot of the shows, I guess, maybe in the second season, maybe the shows that I had missed. Mm-hmm. And John and I, as I say, I did it in concert with John Belushi, every single move. First move, Steve Jordan, and John said absolutely, and we hired him first.
Cool.
And we were hiring him one at a time. Didn't know who else we were going to get quite yet.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I could, it's a long story, but the story of each musician is almost like that movie.
Yeah.
Did you know a lot of these guys prior to, not just know of them, but, know them personally?
Well, certainly I knew a lot of them, like Steve, and the horns we ended up using were the 3 horns from the Letterman band. Excuse me, I say Letterman band. I forgot what decade I was talking about. From the SNL band at the time.
Right.
But my original idea was kind of a 2-horn bluesy thing with just tenor, sax, Marini, and trombone, Tom Bones Malone, just the 2 of those guys. But Alan Rubin, the great trumpeter, was also in the band. He knew Bernie Brillstein a little bit from the Catskills. And he kept laying, why aren't I in this thing? And ultimately, it's just, the point of least resistance. Just fire. We'll have 3 horns. And then...
and then you brought Tom Scott in, too.
Well, we're about to leave for Los Angeles. Tom Malone comes to us and says, my wife's about to give birth. I can't go. As soon as the baby's born, I'll be there. It was a 9-night engagement at the amphitheater, the opening for Steve Martin.
Right.
So, oh my God, he says, but I've got, in the old tradition, you got to send in someone better than you are if you're an honorable musician. He said, I got Tom Scott to do the first couple. What? I'd never met Tom Scott, but I was, of course, very aware of him.
Yeah.
He was a big star.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, he was our horn player. And then when the baby was born, I think on night number 4, Tom Malone arrived. And we said, oh, let's have the 2. For one night, we'll have the 2 of them. We had 4 horns. And boy, it sounded even better. And Bernie said, yeah, let's hire him on.
Amazing.
So I said, that's a great manager.
That is great. Just to bring it back again to this episode we're talking about, do you remember, Paul, 1 a.m., show's over. Do you remember what the vibe was like? Could you feel excitement about what John and Dan had done in this act? Like this was something special that they had done? Or no, it was just like, okay, we got through that. Thank God.
Again, I have to admit, I took these guys for granted. Mm-hmm. It was 2 numbers in the show. We were liable to do it. Garrett had just done it a couple weeks ago in 4-inch heels.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize how rare that really was, that they could do that and could pull it off with such energy. But yeah, they brought an energy to the show.
Yeah,
for sure.
Can I ask one more non-episode related question then about the Blues Brothers? What was your favorite song that you guys played as a band?
The thing fell together. It was unstoppable. And the choosing of the repertoire was just one of the great things. We were focused on, at least until Steve and Duck got there from Memphis, we were going to be a blues band. The first 2 numbers that they had done, Hey Bartender and I Don't Know, those are legit blues numbers. Right. But when Steve and Duck said, well, there's nothing you can dance to, and they suggested doing Soul Man, well, that kind of opened up. Then, then we could do anything, really. And Danny coming up with Rubber Biscuit, ridiculous, And then when John would do a slow blues, which he got from the Downchild Blues Band in Canada, I think. And he said, now my mind don't work, whatever that was. These things come back to me
Shotgun
now.
Blues.
Shotgun Blues, yes. I guess Downchild arrangement of it. great. And then B-movie, well, that wasn't technically a blues. He brought, hung out late with Delbert McClinton. And a couple of nights in a row, I think. And the next thing I know, we're doing that song, which is an incredible song, and the way the two guitars worked in that song it just fell together.
Yeah.
We could sit here and ask you Blues Brothers questions all day, Paul. So we don't want to keep you here too long. But thank you for coming on and talking about this episode with us. It was fantastic to get you in and get your insight. And, an episode that, Tom Davis in his book before he passes thought it was the greatest episode in the history of the show with everything that's on the show. And it kicks off with you. It kicks off with you and the Don Kirshner.
Yeah, but you can't forget when Justin Bieber hosted. Anyway, with that, I say goodnight to you. Thanks for including me in it. I had fun reminiscing.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Gary, I'm going to ask you right now.
Yeah.
Best cold opener of the season?
Oh, yes. I think it has to be.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
the energy, again, this is like an energy thing, right? Like the energy that John brings to this performance when he's dancing and then he starts spinning, and Danny with his harp solo, like that's also amazing and just kind of catches you off guard. Yes, it's remarkable.
And they only get better. Like you can tell they've got the act. They have an act.
Yes.
I don't know if the act is down. And again, they don't have a band. They're doing this with the house band, but you can tell like John is not yet a front man,
right?
But it's there and he'll get there. And I think the next time we see them on the show, when they come back next season as the musical guest, it's an entirely different performance.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Also, I need to ask, does Paul Shaffer now have more solo live from New York's than both Garrett and Jane combined?
I think he has as many, right? Because Garrett has 2. And Jane has none.
Oh, he does. You're right.
Yeah, they're tied.
I knew Jane had 0.
Yeah. Jane has 0.
I was trying to hoodwink Jane in there somehow, Okay, so he's tied with the two of them.
Yeah. Well, then for the monologue, we see Steve at the top of the steps in his trademark white suit, and he comes down for just another remarkable monologue.
I mean, this is probably my all-time favorite monologue.
Ever?
Of all time.
Of anyone?
Ever. Yes.
Okay.
It's perfect. It's quintessential Steve Martin. Bill Murray's hilarious. I've always loved this monologue. It's just, it's so good.
It really is quintessential Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Because you have to have ideas that relate to everyone, that everyone can understand. Not come out here and do things that are over the audience's head. Otherwise, you may as well be like Dimitri in Conditions Humaines. Or Eduardo in The Possessed. But the danger in coming out on TV shows and doing comedy monologues and releasing comedy albums, you can be typecast as a comedian. So what I do in the summertime, I'm happy to announce this, I always do Shakespearean festivals. This summer I'll be going down to San Diego for 2 weeks to do Shakespeare in the Park. We'll be doing King Lear. I'll be playing the role of Little Richard. Then I will go up to San Francisco for 3 weeks there for Shakespeare Under the Stars. We'll be doing Romeo and Juliet. I'll be playing the role of Earl, the jacuzzi salesman.
And then he asks for an audience member to come up to do a magic trick, and Bill comes up as John Aldris. And then it just, the stuff he does with Bill of like taking his watch and then another watch and his wallet and then another wallet and his belt and suspenders and underwear. It's so much fun.
It's so good. It's really fun. And it's so funny. And I hate to do this and like compare it to last week's, but I remember how we had so many comments about Michael Sarrazin, like coming down in this like drab jeans and sweater.
Yes.
Even Steve's outfit, he's in that white suit and he literally like pops off the screen. There's just the aura around him.
Right.
Before he even says anything, the energy is like at a 9.
Totally. And the audience, one thing I don't think we touched on with the cold open was the audience didn't really know how to react to the Blues Brothers at first, right?
Exactly. You don't know what that is.
But Steve Martin comes on stage and they all know what they're in for and they are super excited. Like the ovation that he gets from the crowd is crazy.
Oh, yeah. And then he just dives right in and it's so smart. This whole about being a comedian, being typecast as a comedian. Again, I'd have to say this is one of, if not this has got to be the funniest routine he's done on the show. It's his best stand-up.
I think so.
By far.
Yeah.
Even minus the Bill Murray stuff, just his stand-up alone, like straight up stand-up is just on fire.
Yes.
And then, after all that, then he brings Bill up and does this whole magic act, which is basically just him pickpocketing Bill.
poorly pickpocketing Bill. Like, yeah.
Steals his watch, 2 watches, wallets, rips his belt off. How do you put your pants up? Maybe a belt, maybe. Suspender, boxer shorts, literally rips the shirt off his back. It's just so funny.
Mustache?
That's the highlight to me. The highlight of this entire routine to me has always been Bill comes up and he's got a mustache. And if you're not looking close enough, you just think, all right, Bill's got a mustache this week. He often had a mustache.
And you just saw him in the opening credits with a mustache.
With the mustache.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. And he goes, hey, how long you had that mustache? About 3 years. And he just rips it right off. And like it sells the whole bit so well. It's just great.
Oh,
it's just great.
It
just keeps building and building. It's flawless. This is a flawless routine.
I agree. And Bill is excellent in it as well. Like his part, what he's doing, it's like he's being understated and just kind of like he's surprised every time he gives he's like, is this your watch? Oh, and he's excellent.
He does have like when he steals the second watch, he's like, how'd you get that? He had a great comment, off the cuff. It's genius. It's genius. I don't know. I tried to confirm this. I think they tried to do this monologue the last time Steve hosted. I found pictures dated from his second hosting gig, and it's him and Bill in different costumes, in different suits. So I think we mentioned it last time, but I don't know if they tried this the last time and for whatever reason didn't work and came back to it, but thank God they did.
Absolutely. It fits perfectly in with his monologue too. Like he just, he does the whole thing so well. It's awesome.
He's great.
And then we go to commercial and we get Hey You, which we saw earlier this season.
Yeah. But again, this is just how great this episode is. You're going to throw in one of the all-time best commercial parodies they've done.
Right.
Again, if not all-time of this era, this is an easy top 5, top 3 commercial parody.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that it's Gilda. I love that it's Hey You and it's not chocolate donuts. For whatever reason, it just helps with the vibe of this whole show that you put Hey You in here.
I think that's a good call. Yeah. It really does fit nicely with the rest of the episode and what we're going to see.
And they slide Buck in at the very end. So if there wasn't enough going on this episode, we get a Buck Henry appearance.
That's true.
I mean, come on.
That's true. Oh, it's so funny.
I forgot he was in that till the last second.
Oh, that's funny.
I had forgot about it. And then I'm watching, I'm like, hey, there's Buck again.
That's always been one of the highlights of Hey You for me. Is Buck.
Speaking of Steve getting a huge response.
Holy cow.
Right?
Yes. Steve and Dan come in as the Festrunk Brothers, and the audience again goes bananas.
That could be the biggest response we've seen to anything, any like entrance on this show.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. I mean, it was, again, this crowd was wired at this point. Like they just saw this amazing monologue.
They were ready. Yeah.
They're ready for Steve anyway. So then you bring in these two characters, and this is the classic Festrunk Brothers sketch.
The one. Yeah, I mean, they found the formula on the last one we talked about. So now they know what to do, and they deliver on this one.
Jorg, my brother, there will certainly be a lot of swinging in our bachelor pad tonight.
Hold it. Let's catch some rays.
You and what army? Forget about it. That Fox bar was really something tonight. It was no difficulty to see many swinging Americans enjoying each other a great deal.
And here is a thing I will tell you. The two most swinging foxes had the hots on for us and are coming here tonight to let us hold on to their big American breasts.
Why not? There's nothing preventing them. After all, there's no other pair of Czech brothers who cruise and swing so successfully in tight slacks.
We are two wild and crazy guys.
Every performance is solid. We get obviously Steve and Dan, but then Garrett comes in as Cliff. And then, and his performance, I mean, it's Garrett. So there's like some things that Garrett does that I'm like, all right, settle down on the walk at the end. But
listen,
yeah,
this episode could go down as one of Garrett's greatest performances of all time. Garrett is amazing in everything he does. I'm sorry.
How much is Garrett even in though? He's in this. Well,
he's in enough.
Okay. Yeah.
And when he's in, he delivers, baby.
He does.
You know what? He's coherent. He's funny. You can understand everything he's saying and doing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. No, he's fun as Cliff.
It only adds to how great this episode is. Even Garrett steps up the game.
It's true. Yeah. This is so much fun. And the poor foxes have to go to the National Monument to get birth control. I mean, it's hands down just one of the classic sketches of all time.
Yeah. We mentioned it last time we saw them too. Like now they finally get the foxes. The foxes show up, and it's like such a great arc of these characters. Like now they finally get them.
They break into their check that they do.
It's very funny. I mean, this is just an example of how all the little things just come together. When they do the wild and crazy guy line, it's just even that of like, we are, and they clink their glasses. It's perfect.
Yes.
It is so perfect. That is the iconic clip they will always show. We are clink to wild and crazy guys. That's it. It's just so good. It'll go down as one of the most iconic moments in the history of the show.
I mean, these characters are iconic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they've brought them back a few times in more recent times, but they are characters that no matter how old Steve and Dan are, they could come back and it would still be funny because they could play off them being old.
You can still play it off. Yeah.
It's just brilliant. It's an amazing sketch.
It's great. And you mentioned it. The performances are great. Steve is great on this. He's in full like wild and crazy guy mode. But I tell you what, Dan is putting on a clinic. Yeah. Dan is all in, jumps in both feet. He is committed and he is going above and beyond on this character, which I feel like I haven't seen him do before with the Festrunk Brothers. It's almost like he can't go far enough. He can't turn it up enough in this sketch.
Or in this episode. I mean, he is
all over the episode too.
He is. Yeah. It is a Dan heavy episode.
And it's a long sketch. Yet does not feel like it.
No.
I mean, they come in and they have a good bit, just the two of them talking about themselves.
Yep.
They clean up. They bring out that weird
vacuum,
that portable vacuum
vacuum. Yes.
And then, so they have that. Then they get Cliff in and they have all the discussion with Cliff and how Cliff tells them, how they've been duped by the women and this is America and they've got to relax. And then the women come and there's the last third of the sketch with the women. So it's like, there's a lot going on, but it never felt long.
No, it didn't.
Once.
Because there were no lulls. Just when something had kind of run its course, they brought in Cliff and then that kind of runs its course and they bring in the women. It was so well written. This whole sketch was perfect.
I mean, there's one-liners throughout this entire sketch. Like when Cliff is explaining to him what they should have done. I mean, I still steal Steve's line of, I blame myself. I still, and then when they're both sad, and he's like, we will never swing again.
Yes.
And then there's the physicality of it when the sad walk with the little finger pointing down to the ground. Who could this be?
Oh, it's so
someone
good.
For Cliff. I again, one of the best sketches of all time.
I think so.
Another one. Perfect.
It is.
Perfect.
It is perfect. It's awesome. I think the next sketch is also an all-time classic.
Did you see them going into the sketch as Festrunk? And did you see them all literally
everyone
run off? Steve's shirt was off before he left the stage. Steve was taking his shirt off.
Every one of them. Every one of them.
Rarely see that.
Off.
Yes, every one of them running and like taking clothes off as they were jumping off the stage.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. And the first two we see on screen in the next sketch are Dan and Steve again.
That's right, yeah.
This is the classic Theodoric of York medieval barber sketch with Steve as Theodoric of York. And again, this is another one where most of the cast is in this sketch.
I think it's everybody but Garrett, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Dan comes in to get a haircut and a bloodletting. Gilda plays Brunhilde, Theodoric's assistant. John brings Bill in. And their two performances are two of my favorites ever.
And now it's time for another episode of Theodoric of York, medieval barber.
There you go. Well, looks like I have another patient. I'll be back in a minute to see how you're doing.
Right, thank you. Just a trim, Brunhilde.
Hello, Theodoric, barber of York.
Hello, Joan, wife of Simpkin the miller. Well, how's my little patient doing?
Not so well, I fear. We followed all your instructions. I mixed powder of staghorn, gum of Arabic with boiled sheep's urine and applied it in a poultice to her face.
And did you bury her up to her neck in the marsh and leave her overnight?
Oh, yes. But she still feels as listless as ever, if not more.
Well, let's give her another bloodletting. Brunhilde,
Yes, Theodoric.
take 2 pints.
Yes, Theodoric. Will she be all right, barber?
Well, I'll do everything humanly possible. But unfortunately, we barbers are not gods. You know, medicine is not an exact science, but we're learning all the time. Why, just 50 years ago, we would have thought your daughter's illness was brought on by demonic possession or witchcraft. But nowadays, we know that Isabel is suffering from an imbalance of bodily humors, perhaps caused by a toad or a small dwarf living in her stomach.
Well, I'm glad to see she's in such good hands.
Well, thank you.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Theodoric, barber of York?
Say, don't I know you?
Yeah, you worked on my back.
What seems to be the matter with your friend here?
I broke his legs. I was at the festival of the vernal equinox, and I guess I had a little bit too much meat, and I darted out in front of an ox cart. And it all happened so fast, the poor little fellas couldn't stop in time.
Well, you'll feel a lot better after a good bleeding.
But I'm bleeding already.
Say, who's the barber here?
Bill's accent, it's like the accent he does for like Carl, like from Caddyshack.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice, but it just sells this sketch even better. Like it works so perfect.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of this.
He's so good too. They tie Bill up by his ankles and hang him upside down. And he says, we'll see if you feel better tomorrow. And if not, we'll cut your legs off here.
And before we get into it too deep, how about this set? This is an amazing set. Like you said, they literally do. They hang Bill upside down from like a pulley system. It's a whole medieval lair with huge thrones and stuff everywhere. It's an amazing set. And in addition, there's an amazing wig work in this sketch. Dan comes in for his haircut. He's got this huge wig. Gilda's in a wig. Jane comes in as the mom with wig / extensions in. Like everybody's, maybe not Lorraine, but like everybody's got something going on.
Yeah. And the backdrops, like the painted backdrops are just perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
And there's so many lines. It's so funny.
It's so smart. And I think we mentioned it. We touched on it a little bit last week, but again, this is something you see something so well written, right?
Yeah.
You got to think to yourself, they must have worked on this for weeks.
Right.
You know, they must have had this and been working in like this literally came together in days. You know, we mentioned last week they had the penalty box sketch and Don Novello gets hurt and broke his hip. And that Monday, Tom Davis went to see him in the hospital and he sees him and he's laying in bed. And we've all seen this like old school medical, but he's got, his leg in a cast. It's being held up in the air by like rope and a pulley system with a huge weight at the end of it. And Tom Davis said he just went there and started laughing. In the future, they're going to look back and see this as being so primitive, this whole like medical treatment we're giving him.
Right.
And that gave him the idea of doing a sketch about medieval medicine. So he went home that night and did all this research and came in like late night that night or the next day to Al Franken and Jim Downey. This is what we should do. We should do this. And so now they've written us within 2 days, they wrote this amazing sketch.
That's just incredible that the three of them wrote this sketch in 2 days because there's a lot going on here.
There's a lot. There's nothing missing. Yeah.
I was going to say, we didn't even touch on the bird. So he brings in this bird, which just causes all sorts of chaos because it obviously didn't do what they thought it was going to do. Whatever that was, right? Look at her face or look at her feet. And then it just leads to Steve improvising with Gilda, essentially. And he turns that into a funny bit too, where he's like, well, let's do another 2 quarts and take 2 quarts from that bird too.
Apparently in dress rehearsal, I think the bird, they actually had it tied to a string so it couldn't fly away. But Tom Davis writes about this in his book. But apparently the bird flew and got Steve and Gilda tangled up. And so while the audience found it hilarious, I think it kind of slowed the sketch down because they had to figure out their way out to keep going. But yeah, it's hilarious. That bird just takes off.
Yeah.
Steve, get 2 pints from that bird.
Oh, it's so good.
There's just so many great beats, and it's a great ensemble piece. You know, it opens up with Jane bringing her daughter in, who has seen Theodoric many times before, and again, of course, his answer is to have another bloodletting, and it's just great because then they circle back to it by the end, and he shifts seamlessly from them to Bill and John coming in, and the bird. Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I thought Bill was great in this sketch, but just as I thought Bill was like stealing this sketch, Steve goes back to Jane and Lorraine. Right. And he's like, how is she? And he's like, oh, she's not looking too good. And he's like, oh, take more blood or whatever. And Gilda's like, she's dead.
Yeah.
She's dead. And Jane does that turn on Steve where she calls him a charlatan, just yells at him.
Yes.
Man, so good.
She's so good.
How great is Jane?
How great is Jane? All of the performances across the board were excellent. Yeah.
And then did you remember the ending? They do this, again, now iconic ending of Steve talking about maybe in the future we should test ourselves and have a scientific method and all this stuff. And right. He goes on and on and on. And then he pauses and he goes, nah.
Yeah.
Which they stole from their own sketch the first time he hosted this season when he was that defense lawyer sketch.
Right. No. Yeah.
I mean, this is 2 of the greatest sketches of all time we've just seen.
Yeah.
Both perfect sketches.
Plus an all-time monologue, an all-time commercial, and the first performance of the Blues Brothers. So if you ended the show now, you would still say, this is an amazing episode.
Yeah.
And it would probably be one of our best of the season. All right. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We are going to take a break here and stop our show because
it is the best episode of the season.
It is by far. And we have
of the podcast.
Oh, yes, that's what I meant, by far.
Of course.
Because we've already had Paul Shaffer. And there's so much more to talk about that we don't want to shortchange anything in this amazing episode.
Including 2 more special guests that join us for the second half of the show.
Yes. So it's very exciting. We're very excited. We are going to release part 2 of season 3, episode 18 tomorrow. So check back and listen then. Until then, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
And have a pleasant tomorrow.
The Not Ready for Primetime podcast is a 2 Pints Productions production. Produced and edited by Brad and Gary. Thought about by Brad and Gary. Please rate and review. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
We will never swing again.